Business. Serious face. Another history lesson, guys. Back to school. Now, do you guys remember when you purchased your tickets, there was that warning on there for mature audiences, 18 plus recommended? This is why. We started off soft, but now it's time to get into the heavy-hitting dirty words. The next word is fuck. Do you know what? I feel like to help me get over the giggles, we just need to all say it together. 3, 2, 1. That was beautiful. Okay, this is going to be a two-parter because there's two different schools of thought on this. Both from old-timey days. Again, history. Do you know what? Before I even get into them, I've got a confession for you guys. Every single time we've ever run rehearsal, we only go through shit, and then we figure that this routine is pretty much the same thing and we don't need to run through it. So, I may be a little bit more rumbly and stumbly on this one. Okay, first school of thought on fuck. Okay, let's go first for... Let's go for the kind of bummer out one. It was when fuck was like a legal term for criminals. Is what it was another acronym. It stood for unlawful carnal knowledge. So if we break that down, let's start with the back half first. Carnal knowledge. I've heard, but the for unlawful. So who would this refer to? Well, in old-timey days, fun was illegal. So this would refer to anybody doing it outside of marriage, or doing it for money, or doing it to people who didn't want them to do it to them. Which you still shouldn't do that one. So if you got caught doing one of those types of things and you had to sit in the stocks to embarrass you or make you feel remorse for your crime, they would put above the stock what your crime was. But again, for unlawful carnal knowledge is a little bit wordy, so they would cut that down to F-U-C-K. Fuck. Okay. I just need to clear your palate before we started the second one. Okay. School of thought number 2. It's another acronym, and I feel like when I keep doing the words, I keep going, sometimes I spell it this way, sometimes I spell it this way. Thanks. Ooh, I'm breaking this. Okay, so second one is fornication under consent of the king. And that was not just a Van Halen album. There's a little bit more to it than that. So again, if we break it down, we've got fornication. But under consent of the king, like, why would he give a flying? Well, I'll tell you why. Because back in the days of like the Black Plague, but before scientists were invented, they weren't really sure how they were spreading this stuff around, and they thought perhaps it was a sexually transmitted disease. But I think it was actually like the water or something. But because they thought it was a sexually transmitted disease, they only wanted healthy people fornicating and making babies because they didn't want Black Plague babies. So you would have to go get permission from the king, although I have a feeling that the king had helpers because I have a feeling a lot of people wanted to fornicate. So you would go and get your exam and yep, you're good to go. Go do it. But they would give you a sign to put on the door. But again, it said, well, it didn't say fornication under consent of the king because people didn't have French doors to fit signs that big above them. So they would abbreviate it to a sign that said F-U-C-K. Although I don't really understand why they gave you a sign, like the neighbors needed to know what you were doing. And thin walls or something, they didn't want 911 to get overrun. My neighbors are fucking and I'm not sure if they've got consent. So that was that. So we're gonna move on to our next number. Speaking of fornication, let's bring Bob, Bullet Bob, and his band Burlesco back out. They're all in the band equally, it's not just his band.